nutritious, varied diet. But it takes a great deal of scientific know-how in nutritional biochemistry to know which ones to eliminate. And Dr. Haas developed that diet, and I have since found the rationale for it. So this is what is happening. We're trying to keep undigested food, especially starches and sugars, from getting down into that colon, because all it does, you know what a rumen of a cow is. An incubation tank starts down there, a fermentation tank. We don't want that to happen. We want those healthy bacteria to be there. We want to maintain them, and they can nicely do that with the fiber in their food. None of us can digest fiber. When we eat whole foods, we have fiber in the vegetables, in the fruits, and the whole grains. And they will support the growth of these bacteria and yeast. But we don't want all this undigested sugar and starch to get down there and overfeed them, because what they do is start migrating up the small intestine, right here in the ileum, where Crohn's usually starts. That's where they first migrate. They cause inflammation, and they cause all the symptoms that you get with Crohn's disease. Terrible pain from the gas building up there. Terrible pain from inflammation, obstruction of the small intestine, so food can't go down, and they're rushed to emergency, throwing up and with terrible pain. So what we're trying to do is get these fellows down to their normal size by giving a full, varied, well-balanced diet, but still knowing what we're doing.
Well, so then the people who are aware of and have been working with the rotation diet then, rather than feel like now we've got to switch over to a whole different type of thing, just look at it like you're already on the right track and be doing good things, but now we're just going to go a step further with it.
That's absolutely right. And in fact, I am getting an increasing number of letters from the clinical ecologists. There's a doctor in Oregon that's been writing me, has his nurse writing me. Some of his patients haven't done too well on the rotary diet. They have them on this diet, and they're doing beautifully. So there's more communication going on. I have to give the people who developed the rotary diet a tremendous amount of credit. They were the first group of doctors who realized the importance of food. And they got us all started on thinking about food and all these other problems, so they deserve a big pat on the back. But at any rate, this is just a little extension of what they're doing. And so there's no contradiction here. At any rate, this is what it's all about. Again, to repeat, you can eat the best diet in the world. You can pop all the pills you want. But if you are not digesting, you will not assimilate. And you will not, therefore, nourish the spleen, the brain, the liver, all the other organs. They are dependent on this gastrointestinal tract, this intestine, to process your food and absorb it for you. So you can take all the vitamins in the world. They're probably helping, but you've got to think of digestion. That's also one of the pillars of nutritional biochemistry.
And another aspect of that, too, is the emotional thing that goes along with it. And as I hear you telling your story about your daughter, through all of that, I'm sure you were giving her some emotional support, because sometimes with children, we are hearing so much about ADD and those type of things. And these children are being labeled as hyperactive, and they don't know how to discipline, they don't know how to deal with them. Let's put them on Ritalin. And it breaks my heart, because it takes away their ability to be the person that they're meant to be. And that is something that's very close to my heart, to see the things that we can do to help change the attitude of the parents. This is a very
serious thing that's happening. You know, I'm older than you are, Wilma. And I lived, I mean, things are cyclic. It wasn't, how many years ago, 20 years ago, that Dr. Feingold treated hyperkinetic behavior, and he was into the additives. Interestingly enough, when he took them off the additives, they were also off the junk, because you have to give, you see, but he was projecting in on additives alone. But I said to myself, well, if they're off the additives, they're eating real food now. So why did they get better? Was it the fact that the additives were removed, or because they were eating quality whole food? Yeah. But we're not going to argue that. You know, there is a chapter in my book called The Brain Connection.
Yes.
And I often laugh about it. If I die tomorrow, I will die in peace, because that chapter talks about hyperkinetic behavior. It talks about epilepsy being reversed. It talks about not all, but those people who have some bowel problems, along with the epilepsy and the schizophrenia. If people who have children with ADD put them on this diet for 10 days, I will bet you that 85–95% of them are turned around in 10 days without Ritalin.
Now, let's just stop and really think about that. You probably either have a child or know someone who does have a child that is in this situation. And when the determination has been here to do what has been done to help us to understand this. I think this is really exciting because these are little lives that we're talking about that can make them have happiness for the rest of their life, or they can live in agony for the rest of their life. I know I lived in agony for quite a long period of time before I became aware of the food I was eating was poisoning my system. So this is something that is very special, and the more we can help other people to understand this, then each one of us needs to share it with other people, and we can really make an impact on the whole world by helping other people to understand these things. And so in really understanding now how this can help people, I'd like to talk to Linda for a little bit and just understand where she came from and how long she was ill, and let her explain a little bit about her condition to us.
Thank you. Well, first I'd like to say that I can't express to you enough how honored I am to be sitting next to Elaine Gottschall. I'm not kidding. Her book and her diet has literally changed my life. It has changed the life of my husband, my children, and it has made me a healthy person. I've had Crohn's disease for 11 years. I was diagnosed with it about 8 years ago. They tried to figure it out for a long time. Finally, they did when I went in with hemorrhaging, rectal hemorrhaging. I had to have several blood transfusions, and now, finally, after doing several completely humiliating tests, they figured out Crohn's disease. Unfortunately, I was also told that this was something I would just have to live with, eat whatever you usually do, and just get used to counting bathrooms at the mall and at every public area that you go into, because you will have to just deal with it. Several years later, I perforated. I had bowel perforation. I was very ill, no energy. I was eating, of course, the things that you think of eating without the education are cereal with milk, mashed potatoes, all those things. Now that I'm educated, I understand that was exactly the wrong thing. But at that time, I was putting that only into my system, and I ended up having a perforation, which is like an appendix breaking. My bowel simply pretty much exploded, and all those toxins leaked out into my body. I went into surgery not knowing whether or not I would be alive, whether or not I would live through it. Thank God I did. I have a wonderful family and prayer, and but now I wanted to know more. I can't continue to live like this, not knowing when I'm going to end up in the hospital next, or not knowing how to help myself. When moving to Fort Wayne, I became part of the Crohn's support group here in Fort Wayne, and thank God that was where I was introduced to Mrs. Gottschall's diet. Her theory and her research has enabled me to have something to get my hands on and to study and to put into practice.
So this is where now she has something to focus on, a goal, something to really work with. And when you think of how in what she's saying, the same thing, you know, with me is, and with you also, this doesn't just affect you, it affects your whole family, and how they can deal with the whole thing. So as you're listening out there, if you have these conditions or know someone who does, we hope that you'll look into this so that you can have a happier, healthier life. And what Linda had to